In today's video, not only will I teach you how to achieve this eye-catching scheme, but more importantly, I'll try to convince you on why you should give this and many other cheat schemes a try, as well as how they can help you speed up your projects and break the monotony of traditional painting. So let's get to it while I lay down some washes over this Hell Knight, which I'll go more into detail later. But first, what's wrong with traditional painting? Be it the trusty base coat, wash and highlight formula, or painting everything by the book or strictly lore accurately. Well, there is nothing inherently wrong with it. But take a step back and think why you paint miniatures. Most likely you fall into one of two categories. You are either a gamer or a painter, or a bit of both, but you probably lean more towards one than the other. Whichever category you're in, think about this. What if your gaming pieces stood out from the rest, instead of just being copies of everyone else's? Doesn't that sound appealing? Or if traditional painting feels repetitive and takes too long, doesn't a simpler and fresher option sound worth trying? Well, that's where paint schemes such as this come in. However, for some of you, these gimmicky schemes might seem lazy, and I've had that feeling about them before, but I've come to realize that this is only the case when the execution is lazy, or more precisely, when it doesn't meet our standards. To make this clearer, let's look at what I've got so far. Over my base coat, a reverse zenithal of red and dark grey, I applied a general red wash to begin establishing that sense of heat or demonic energy seeping from within the armor. This was followed by an orange and then a yellow wash, each covering a slightly smaller area than the one before. By the way, for those looking to replicate this scheme, here are the colors I used. All of them were diluted to a wash consistency in the same way, 3 to 4 parts water to 1 part paint. The washes were followed by a careful dry brush of dark grey, mainly making sure that the brush moved perpendicular to the recesses, so the bristles wouldn't get into them and stain the bright colors. On one hand, this almost black color implies that the raised details are charred and not as hot as the recesses. On the other, it creates a huge contrast from light to dark, which makes the yellow spots stand out even more. However, while this took me minutes to complete and some of you may be thinking of trying it out, as I said, this was the lazy way of doing it. It is effective, but it may not necessarily appeal to every painter. But then, why is it that I found my reference so much more appealing, even though I followed basically the same steps? Well, that's because I was lazy, and while the steps were simple, still I rushed through them. With that in mind, I began again by reapplying the overall red wash. The previous work, however, wasn't all for nothing, because the presence of the orange and yellow tones as well as the dark tones on the raised details laid the groundwork for this second red wash to create a more complex and smoother color transition with wider tonal variety, already giving me a step up from the beginning. Afterwards, I continued once again with the orange wash, but this time, instead of slapping it on some recesses, I took the time to guide it and let it properly settle without spilling outside the red halo created by the previous wash. Looking at the model from further away allowed me to have a more general view and make sure I wouldn't overdo the orange, as well as check for any areas that were missing some spots of it. When it came to choosing the location for it, I stayed away from any hard to reach areas, and instead focused on all the ridges that were in plain view. When I moved on to the yellow, it was important to unload any excess paint on a paper towel first, to have full control over its application, as just like with the orange, I wanted this color to remain within the boundaries of the previous layer. But not only that, I was also more selective with its placement, as when working with small spots of light such as this, less is more. Placing it everywhere would only detract from the impact it creates. Yes, this took more time than my first attempt, but the results were worth the extra couple minutes, just like when I attempted the living statue scheme a while back for my Stormcast Eternals. At that time, not only did I follow the lazy recipe of dry brushing a succession of greenish greys, but I also added some texture to the model through some sand and dirt. Also, a small OSL effect over the eyes and gems, and some homemade moss to top it off. In my opinion, it is in those small decisions that the difference between a lazy paint job and an eye-catching one lies. One that's sure to turn heads no matter the simplicity of its steps. But what I love most about this type of schemes is the fact that we can skip painting the Griblies, such as belts and pouches, which I personally find extremely boring to paint, and which over time some companies seem to have added more and more of them just for the sake of cramming extra detail onto the model. To finish off, I applied the dark grey both more deliberately through a stippling motion and with my paint diluted to where it was slightly transparent. Together they added an extra hint of texture and allowed the color to better blend with the underpainting. While not as fast as a dry brush, you can see the process isn't slow either. Yet this scheme, the living statue one, or even this midnight one, for which I'll release a tutorial soon, may not work the same for every model. While they are all cool solutions for pulling off an eye-catching army or warband really fast, it is still important to find one that properly fits your project. For example, the Terracotta Army scheme showcased by mediocre hobbies for the Old War Cathay Army box. Essentially, it is just a different shade of the living statue one, but it fits them like a glove, while remaining extremely simple, eye-catching, and in theme. If you know of any other schemes like the ones I've mentioned here, where the overall idea matters more than the individual details, I would love to hear about it, as right now I'm in the mood to try out new approaches, to tackle my pile of shame faster and have fun while doing it. With that said, I hope you found the video helpful and that my rambles didn't detract from the overall explanation.